In the ever-shifting landscape of global power, nations are constantly re-evaluating their alliances, economic dependencies, and strategic partnerships. One such recalibration is taking place in Southeast Asia, where Malaysia appears to be gravitating closer to China while steadily distancing itself from the United States. This evolving relationship has sparked international debate and concern, particularly in Washington, where the implications of losing influence over a strategically vital country are becoming increasingly apparent. But the reasons behind Malaysia's pivot are neither abrupt nor simple. They are the result of deep-rooted historical ties, economic pragmatism, shifting geopolitical interests, and a careful balancing act between the East and the West. This video will explore 10 compelling reasons why Malaysia is turning its gaze toward Beijing while cooling its relationship with Washington. Each point dives deep into the political, cultural, economic, and strategic dimensions driving this transformation. Historical and cultural ties with China. Malaysia's relationship with China predates modern nation-states. The ancient trade routes that once connected the Malay Peninsula with China laid the foundation for centuries of cultural and economic exchanges. Chinese influence is visible not just in commerce but also in cuisine, language, and societal norms. A significant portion of Malaysia's population is of Chinese descent, further deepening the cultural connection between the two nations. Over the years, these deep-rooted relationships have made diplomatic engagement with China more natural and culturally fluent for Malaysian leaders. Unlike the often transactional nature of U.S.-Malaysia ties, the Malaysia-China relationship carries emotional, historical, and societal depth, giving China a unique diplomatic advantage. China's economic magnetism. China's meteoric economic rise has turned it into an irresistible economic partner. For Malaysia, a country seeking rapid infrastructure development and economic diversification, China's Belt and Road Initiative has opened doors to unprecedented funding and cooperation. Projects like railways, ports, and industrial zones have reshaped Malaysia's economic landscape, often with fewer political conditions than Western investments. The United States, with its more cautious investment approach and strict regulatory strings, struggles to compete with the sheer scale and speed of Chinese development aid. Malaysia's economic planners see China not just as a trade partner, but as a gateway to future-proofing the nation's economic growth. U.S. foreign policy fatigue in Southeast Asia. Many Southeast Asian countries, including Malaysia, have grown wary of America's inconsistent foreign policies. Over the years, shifts between engagement and neglect have left allies confused and skeptical of Washington's long-term commitment. While China maintains a consistent presence in the region through diplomacy, trade, and military outreach, the U.S. has oscillated between pivoting to Asia and retreating into protectionism. Malaysia has noticed this inconsistency and, in search of a more reliable partner, has begun tilting toward a country that shows sustained interest in the region's stability and prosperity. Strategic neutrality and non-alignment. Malaysia has long adopted a policy of non-alignment, aiming to avoid entanglement in great power conflicts. This principle aligns more closely with China's regional engagement, which emphasizes mutual respect and non-interference, at least in rhetoric. In contrast, the U.S. often pushes for ideological alignment, human rights accountability, and democratic values as prerequisites for deeper cooperation. For Malaysia, this creates a diplomatic strain. Aligning with China allows Malaysia to pursue its own national interests without the pressure of conforming to Western norms or facing lectures on governance. The appeal of China lies in its respect for sovereign choices, something Malaysia holds dear. Shared interests in regional stability. Malaysia and China share overlapping interests in maintaining stability in Southeast Asia. Both countries are part of ASEAN frameworks and engage actively in regional dialogues. China's role as a stabilizer through economic integration rather than military intervention resonates with Malaysia's peaceful diplomacy. The United States, meanwhile, continues to maintain a military footprint in the region, which some in Malaysia view as a destabilizing factor rather than a protective one. With China advocating for multilateral solutions and regional cohesion, Malaysia finds greater synergy in working alongside its Asian neighbor rather than a distant superpower. Trade dependency and market access. Malaysia's export-driven economy thrives on access to large and growing markets. China offers just that, a massive consumer base eager for Malaysian palm oil, electronics, and natural resources. Bilateral trade agreements have lowered barriers, boosted investments, and opened up supply chains beneficial to Malaysian industries. On the other hand, U.S. trade policies have become more protectionist in recent years, leading to uncertainty and tension. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, once seen as a counterbalance to China's influence, collapsed in part due to U.S. withdrawal. With China filling the vacuum left behind, Malaysia is naturally following the path of least resistance and greatest opportunity. Diplomatic engagement and respect. China's approach to diplomacy in Southeast Asia is characterized by face-to-face dialogue, lavish summits, and respectful tone. Malaysian leaders are frequently invited to high-level forums in Beijing, where they are treated as equals and given platforms to speak on regional issues. This stands in contrast to the often hierarchical and transactional nature of U.S. diplomacy. Malaysia appreciates the respect and recognition it receives from China, particularly in matters of sovereignty and national pride. The optics of equal partnership matter, and China plays this diplomatic game exceptionally well. Technology and infrastructure cooperation. Malaysia is rapidly advancing its digital infrastructure, and China has positioned itself as a key enabler of this transformation. From 5G networks to AI collaboration and smart city projects, Chinese tech firms are deeply embedded in Malaysia's technological evolution. The U.S., wary of security concerns around Chinese tech, has not provided credible alternatives. This lack of engagement has allowed China to dominate in areas that matter most to Malaysia's future development. The partnership is not merely commercial, it's strategic, helping Malaysia leapfrog into the digital age with a willing and capable partner. Public perception and media influence. Chinese media presence in Malaysia is growing, and with it, public sentiment is subtly shifting. Beijing has invested heavily in soft power, funding cultural exchanges, media collaborations, and educational partnerships. Malaysian audiences are increasingly exposed to narratives that portray China as a benevolent and rising global leader. Meanwhile, U.S. media is often seen as critical and condescending toward developing countries. The narrative battle is one China is quietly winning in Malaysia, and public opinion is tilting in favor of closer ties with the East. National identity, pride, and regional affinity are being reinforced through carefully curated Chinese influence. The South China Sea dilemma and calculated silence. One of the thorniest issues between Malaysia and China is the South China Sea dispute. Yet, despite conflicting territorial claims, Malaysia has chosen a more diplomatic and quiet approach. This strategy stems from a desire to avoid conflict and maintain economic cooperation. The United States frequently urges confrontation and freedom of navigation operations, escalating tensions. Malaysia sees greater benefit in managing disputes behind closed doors rather than through public confrontations. This pragmatic stance favors China's diplomatic playbook over America's more aggressive posturing. Even when interests clash, Malaysia finds it easier to negotiate with China than to align with Washington's military agenda. Malaysia's pivot toward China is not a betrayal of the West, nor is it a sudden strategic gamble. It is the result of a thoughtful multi-layered reassessment of national interests in a rapidly changing world. Each reason outlined reflects Malaysia's pursuit of economic security, political autonomy, and regional harmony. As China's star rises and America's influence fluctuates, countries like Malaysia are no longer forced to choose sides in a binary world. Instead, they are redefining their own paths based on historical connections, future aspirations, and the delicate art of diplomatic balancing. Whether this tilt will endure or reverse in the years ahead depends on how both superpowers respond to Southeast Asia's evolving priorities. For now, however, it is clear that the winds in Putrajaya are blowing eastward.